Now that our system storage is configured and some cameras have been added, it's time to finish out the setup basics, as well as add some people that will be using your new Milestone system. We'll start out by adding users. There are two types of user authentication: basic users and Windows or Windows domain users. Basic users are nothing more than credentials, and are of no use until they are first added into a role that will define their access privileges. To set up a basic user, click on the Basic Users node. Here you right-click and choose Create Basic User, and then define a username and password for that account. These basic user accounts exist only for this Milestone system and are independent of the Windows or Active Directory. Even if your organization uses Active Directory exclusively, basic users can be a convenient solution for allowing non-employees, such as system installers or contracted guards, to access the system without having to establish a full Active Directory account for those users. So next, we need to click on Roles. Here we see pre-configured system roles, and have the option to right-click and create new roles if desired. Notice here on the Info tab, you can select what Smart Client profile will be associated with this role. We'll cover Smart Client profiles later. But for now, let's add our new basic user into the administrator role by clicking on that role, then clicking on the Users and Groups tab. Click the Add button, choose Basic User, and then select your new user account and click OK. That user account now has full administrative privileges in Milestone and may log in with either the Smart Client or the Management Client with no restrictions. You may have noticed that the other tabs on the right are grayed out. This is because we're currently in the administrator role. Administrators, including Windows administrators, have full and total access in Milestone, so these tabs are not currently needed. While we're here, if your computer is on a Windows domain, click the Add button again, and this time choose Windows User. Here you'll see the familiar Windows tool where you can add Active Directory users or groups to be associated with this role. This is all there is to adding Active Directory users or groups. You may make a role with the desired privileges and then associate an Active Directory group or user with that Milestone role. For the purposes of this video, however, we'll continue with a local user account, as the concepts are the same. Let's remove our new user account from the administrative role, and instead add our new credentials to the operators role. Because operators is not an admin account, the full array of privilege tabs are now available to us. We'll cover just the basics of these tabs. The first tab, Overall Security, allows the issuing of broad general privileges. This tab takes priority over the latter tabs. Let's choose the category Management Server, and then if desired, grant or explicitly deny this user access to various aspects of the management server. This is important to remember. The default behavior in Milestone is to deny, so by choosing nothing here, this user will not have access to any of these resources, but can be given more granular access in the latter tabs. Choosing either Allow or Deny will result in the corresponding, more granular options in the later tabs being grayed out, as they will have been overridden by these choices. Next, click on the Cameras node under Roles. Here again, you can choose what privileges you may want to globally apply for this user. Again, be careful. Unless you want to have these privileges apply to all cameras for this user, the most common choice will be to leave these blank and apply more granular privileges on the next tab. Now let's move to the Device tab. Here we'll see the importance of the camera groupings we covered in the previous module. You can click on a camera group and have your chosen privileges apply to all the cameras inside that group. This allows you to easily give a user or Active Directory group in this role access to large groupings of cameras without having to go through and adjust privileges on a camera-by-camera basis. Or, alternatively, you can open a camera group, select a specific camera, and then control access on an individual camera basis if needed. Now let's go through a few of the privileges and their meanings. Read is the option for the role to see that the camera exists. Live is to allow the live viewing of video. If your version of the software has a submenu here, you can reference a time profile to control when this role has access to this privilege. Playback, as expected, is to allow the playback of recorded video. Depending on your version, you may also be able to control when this privilege is accessed, and, on some versions, even how far back the role is allowed to access. Smart Search is a feature in our Smart Client software that allows for drawing a box on screen and almost instantly searching within that boundary for motion. Users with playback access will generally want this powerful feature as well. Most of the other options are fairly self-explanatory, and if you're unsure, again, our context-sensitive help can offer quick insight into what that option does. A moment ago, we referenced Time Profiles. Let's briefly explore that for a moment by clicking on the Time Profiles node. Time profiles are how we define time in Milestone. Commonly, these are used for things such as business hours and holidays. rules and privileges can reference these profiles to control behaviors based on time. For example, an administrator can configure the system to generate alarms or alerts when motion is detected after business hours, or a user could configure a system to record consistently at night while shifting to motion detection recording during the day. Corporate and expert users will also have a special day-length time profile available that can calculate the actual sunrise and sunset time based on your GPS coordinates. This allows you to have the system behave different when it's truly day or night versus strictly based on a time schedule. Now let's move to the rules engine. This is the heart of your milestone system that controls its overall behavior. Here we have the most basic fundamental rules, such as the default start feed rule that controls the camera video streams, and the default record on motion rule that instructs the system to record video when motion's been detected. Each rule is independent of the others, and the list populates alphabetically, meaning the order in which the rules appear have no relevance on their function. Let's create a new rule to demonstrate the procedure, but first, so we can easily test our rule and demonstrate it working, we'll set up a user-defined event. Think of a user-defined event as a light switch with no wiring. It's an event that the user can trigger, such as with an on-screen button in the Smart Client, or with your mobile client application. But, to make it useful, we need to add wiring with the rules engine. Click on the User-Defined Events node, right-click, and create a new event. Let's call it Log Entry Test, and then click OK. Now let's return to the Rules node, right-click, and choose Add Rule, and name it something like 01 UDE Test Rule, so it will appear at the top of the list and be easy to find. Next, you'll need to choose if this rule will be triggered by a time profile or a system event. Let's leave it on the default event choice. Now move below and click on the blue event link to choose what event will trigger this rule. Expand External Events, User-Defined Events, and choose our newly added Log Entry Test, and click OK. We don't need to make further selections, so we'll click Next. Here you can choose any time-based conditions for when this rule should apply. Since we want this rule to operate at all times, we won't make a selection here and simply click Next to continue. Now we choose from a variety of actions this rule can perform. For an easy test, let's choose Make New Log Entry. Now you can click on the blue Log Entry variable field and control the contents of what the log entry will say when this rule is triggered. This includes adding variables such as the device that triggered the alert. Once that's done, click OK and then Next. Lastly, some rules need a stop action. An example of a stop action would be if you only wanted to record video during an event and you wanted to stop recording at the end of that event, or after a certain amount of time has passed. Or perhaps you set up a rule to trigger a PTZ preset on motion, and when the motion event completes, you might want the camera to move to another position. However, in this case, we don't need a stop action to be performed at the end, so we just click Finish. And that completes the creation of your first rule. Now, let's test it by going back to the User-Defined Events node, selecting your event, and clicking on the Test button. Now, move to the Rule Log node, and see the entry that you've generated by testing your user-defined event. User-defined events can easily be mapped to on-screen buttons in the Smart Client software or triggered from the Milestone mobile phone application. So instead of just creating a log entry, you could configure your rule to activate a PTZ preset or trigger the I/O output of a camera or network I/O device. This allows people to trigger real-world actions, such as opening a door or gate, with a simple on-screen button press. The next concept we'll briefly touch on are called Smart Client Profiles. These apply to our Professional Plus, Expert, and Corporate users. While somewhat similar to access privileges defined in roles, the two should not be confused. While roles define what a user is allowed to do, Smart Client Profiles actually alter the visual appearance or behavior of the Milestone Smart Client software. This allows you to greatly simplify the Smart Client interface or limit what operators can see and do, thus reducing training requirements. Click on the Smart Client Profiles node and click on the default profile. Here on the Info tab, you can see what roles are using this particular profile. Note, however, if you want to actually associate a profile with this role, as we mentioned earlier, you'll do that from the Info tab on the Role node, and not here. Note also that even administrator roles are affected by the Smart Client Profiles, so it's a good idea to make a new role for secondary, lower privileged users, leaving the profile the administrator role uses largely unchanged. Over the next series of tabs, you'll see a great variety of functions and features that can be restricted in the Smart Client software. I'll briefly cover a few of these general good practice options most commonly restricted for users. The first is found in the General tab. It's a good idea to lock the default image quality option and the default frame rate option to full and unlimited respectively. This reduces the chance a user can inadvertently make changes that would result in high levels of CPU usage on your recording server. Next, on the Export tab, it's good practice to make the Still Images option unavailable. If a user were to select this option on an export, it will generate a still JPEG image for every frame of recorded video, often resulting in many thousands of image files being created in the export location. Some network administrators will also want to control the location where video exports are allowed to be saved, such as to a write-only secure network folder, versus just allowing video exports to be saved anywhere from the user's workstation. And finally, if you click on the View Layouts tab, it's good practice to restrict the ability for users to create very large layouts, an example of which is the 100 camera 10x10 view, as most computers running the Smart Client software won't have sufficient power to display 100 cameras simultaneously. Last, we'll cover some important networking-related areas that system administrators should be aware of, particularly if your system is to be remote accessed across different networks or geographical areas. First, there are 4 areas in Milestone where network configurations can be defined. Whether or not these are important to your particular installation depends on the network configuration where the software is installed and what features are being used. Often, you'll only need to make changes to these if your system is having connectivity issues. The first area can be found by right-clicking on the very topmost node that has your system name and choosing Properties. Sometimes this is only accessible from the management client running on the actual management client desktop machine. In this area, you can define the IP addresses and domains that reach your system, and importantly, specify if they're external, real-world addresses. The second area is accessed through the Tools menu by choosing Options, followed by the Network tab. Here you can define the local IP ranges for your system. This is important so that Milestone knows which IP ranges need to go out of the LAN, particularly for remote Smart Client connections. The third area is accessed uniquely for each recording server. Click on the Recording Server node, click on one of your recording servers, and click on the Network tab. Here you can define the public address of where this recording server is located. Remember from the first module in this series that the video seen in the Smart Client streams directly from the recording servers. If your recording server is being accessed off the LAN, or perhaps you have a recording server in a remote facility, it's important to define what the public address is so the Smart Clients can access it from outside your immediate network. The last area is in the Mobile Server configuration. Click on the Mobile Servers node, click on your desired mobile server, and then click on the Connectivity tab. Here you can enable Universal Plug and Play and have the system attempt to auto-configure a compatible router if desired. Otherwise, you'll need to set up port forwarding to forward incoming connections to your mobile server on the defined ports, usually 8081 for open communications or 8082 for encrypted communications. Most importantly, you can define an Internet IP address or hostname where your mobile server can be reached on the Internet. If you're using a dynamic DNS service, that domain should be entered here as well. This all works in concert to allow your mobile app to reliably reach your mobile server from both your wireless LAN and when switched over to a cellular data connection. Remember again that Milestone has a very extensive, context-sensitive help system that will provide information based specifically on your current selection in the management software. There are also extensive training resources online in the Learning and Performance section of the website, as well as additional resources on YouTube. Particularly, there's a lot of great pre-existing content related to the Smart Client software to help you with watching, searching, and exporting video. And that's it for this Getting Started video series. We hope we're helping you build a safer and more secure world, and welcome to the Milestone family.